Where's it from? Is it American? It sounds
It's
American.
American. They started buying probably late 50s. So it should be in, I think.
It's a great era to collect species from.
Yeah.
So you had that growing up?
Yeah.
Awesome.
My daughter is
Awesome.
put on my blue desk.
Project, so.
If you tell my dad was a food maker, like he made such good food.
Oh, yeah. My husband is
Cool. Cool. Yeah, I like working for religious and spiritual institutions because it gives me a chance to bring that part of myself into it as well, which is not normally something that I get to do in my work. So, morning. So yeah, it's really, and I know that
Good morning. Hello to our faithful few who are here with us this morning. It's likely that we might have people kind of coming in and out this morning, but thank you to those who are here for our new sanctuary furniture installation, dedication. I wanted to say a special thanks to Nick Schnitzer, who's here with us this morning. You'll hear a bit about and from him in just a few minutes. But just to give you a brief recap, I served on the task force committee team, whatever, that helped design and come up with this furniture. It was a team of me, Griff, Leslie Moore, and David Wheelock, which David was unable to be here this morning. But we partnered with the FBC Foundation that provided a grant for this new furniture in 2019. That was part of the 50th anniversary celebration of our building. So that was a fun process to be a part of, and we're really excited for this new art, this beautiful works of art that will now be in our sanctuary. So you'll hear a bit more about that process in just a minute. But I'd like to open us with a brief word of prayer, and then I'll pass it over to Leslie. Let's pray. God, with the approach of cooler weather, we are reminded that as seasons change, so do things in our lives, and so do we. God, we are grateful for the season in this church's life that we have been in this building, that we have been a community together in the ways that simple things like furniture have served us. God, we are grateful for the life of the communion table and pulpit and items in this sanctuary that they have served the community here at First Austin for 50 plus years now. And we are grateful for the life of this new furniture, that it would help serve us, remind us of your calling to be community together, to serve one another at the table of Christ, to hear the good news preached from this pulpit. God, for all that has been, we say thanks. And for all that will be, we say yes. In the name of our Creator, our Christ, and our Comforter. Amen.
Good morning. In the fall of 2019, which seems a lifetime ago, I was serving as the governing board chair-elect. Griff and I, with the help of many others, began planning for the 50th anniversary of this building. We had a discussion and a walkthrough of the building with some of members who have design and construction experience. Our plan was to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the building in February of 2020, and then have a small capital improvement campaign to rejuvenate this space for the future. One of the main improvements that came out of that meeting was the need for a new communion table and pulpit. The pulpit was too large and kept speakers separated from the congregation. The table is central to our faith and to our beliefs at First Austin. We are all welcome at this table. It is our symbol of Jesus creating a fellowship, a community. But this particular table had us shackled in several ways. It is enormously heavy and takes several strong people to move. It is also damaged and very fragile now after mishaps while trying to move it. So the governing board received a gift from the foundation to commission a new pulpit and communion table. We wanted the table to be large, as all are welcome. We wanted the table to be simple, as our love for one another should be unambiguous. We wanted the table to be beautiful, as Christ's love for us is beautiful. We had that anniversary party, and it was wonderful to have everyone together celebrating our building and how it had served our church for 50 years. And then the world stopped for COVID. We closed our physical doors and didn't see each other in person for over a year. Our congregation and our needs changed. Our building sat empty. Now we are back together, but we have permanently changed. Our building needs more help than we realized in the fall of 2019, and therefore we are looking at even bigger changes. But Christ's symbol of our community will always be with us. The table is large, and all are welcome. The table is simple. Our love for one another should be ambiguous. The table is beautiful. Christ's love for us is beautiful. The table is still central to our faith and to our space, and we have this new one to take with us on our journey.
So when moment the table was commissioned, I called Elizabeth Chapin, our friend, and said, Elizabeth, do you know anyone in town who could help us do this? We knew we did not want to just order a communion table online from churchsupply.com, that sort of thing. I said, Elizabeth, do you have anybody who would be good for this sort of project? And she said, I have somebody who will be wonderful. You're going to fall in love with him. He's a delight. He's perfect for a project like this. And she introduced me to Nick, who has proven to be all of those things. So it's exciting to have him here this morning. I'm going to ask some questions of him about the design of these elements, and if y'all will pay attention so you can share it with the rest of the congregation. I know we're lots of places this morning. So if you'll pay attention, because there's some details about this I want to make sure we don't miss about Nick and the work Nick's done. So Nick, if you'll come up here and join me. And Nick, if you will start by briefly introducing yourself, kind of your journey, just a few words about you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nick. It's good to see you all here. It's good to be here this morning. I'm grateful to God for my life, my wonderful life, and this church for welcoming me and my work, and to Elizabeth and my parents and all my spiritual guides along the way. I'm an artist. I'm a craftsman. I build furniture. I build structures. I teach mainly kids to do the same. And my wife and I travel around the world participating in artist residencies, working with mainly youth, doing the same things, teaching them. My wife is a graphic designer and artist, and so she helps the organizations beautify their presence and become more functional online. And I usually do a building project with kids, and we've been around the world doing it. It's a marvelous journey so far. So, what else to say? I grew up in a conservative Jewish home, and we'll get into some more of that as we go. Hi, Edie. It's my daughter, Edie. And in, I guess it was 2018, we were on a residency in Kenya, and I got baptized in the Methodist Church. My wife and I are members of a church here called the Church of Conscious Harmony, and this opportunity presented itself, and it's a peak moment for me in my personal and artistic career to be welcomed into such an important role. And I take it as a clue that I'm moving in the right direction.
So when we first met, Nick spent some time in the space by himself. We had a brief meeting, and then he said, can I sit in this space for a while? And then he came back to my office and said, can I come on Sunday morning and watch y'all worship for a few Sundays? So tell us, before we get into the design of things, what spoke to you about this space and the way we worship that influenced how you started thinking about these two elements?
So initially, my first 2 times to this church before I came to worship were for theater. So I want to thank you for supporting the arts and being inclusive and doing so much beyond worship. You've helped me expand my notion of what worship means and support and all of that. So the first time that I was in the sanctuary, it struck me as being very similar to my synagogue growing up. A really big, cavernous, impressive, grand space, high volume, brick, a bit severe. That was, the style of the time, a little brutalist, touches here and there. So that was the building, and of course this amazing installation here that's such a hallmark of this church, which was lit up beautifully during Godspells. Very impressive. So that's the building. The first time I came to worship, I saw a man sit with some children at a bench. The children were seated on the floor right here. The man was seated on the bench, and he had a conversation with these children about what items they thought were important for people to have. because it was getting cold, I think. And so they talked about blankets and clothes. And so this was a moment when the church was gathering items to distribute to the homeless. And this man was talking with these kids about why it was important to have these items. And I was struck at how intimate it was. Inside of this big space with a lot of people here, there was this really homey, intimate moment happening. And definitely in my experience with Judaism, I never seen that, something so personal. And the dichotomy of this big space with this really small, precious thing happening was really impactful to me. And I remember you saying that one of the key elements that these items would need to convey is a welcoming, homey feel, which was a bit of a challenge for me, honestly. And we'll get into more of the design and how we moved through some of those ideas.
Because we started with the table and then moved to the pulpit. So do you want to talk about the communion table, what you thought of, some of the elements, the little details that we want to make sure we don't miss?
Yeah. So initially, my process works like this. We are having a conversation about arriving at a goal, arriving at a destination, or moving towards a destination via an object. And so I am not the kind of artist that has a style and you come to me and you pick your color and you get my style. I'm interested to solve a problem or approach a challenge, and the resulting object is the bridge between here and there, wherever here and there is. So, and my energy moves in these very strong crescendos. So I came in, the challenge of creating an object that would cement itself and be the focal point in this really big space. I think I kind of came in swinging, and the initial design was kind of in that same brutalist, modern, very square, rectilinear planes that intersected and definitely had a heavy feeling. And when I first showed that design to the board, everybody was like, that's cool, but that's not quite right. So then we start the conversation. I design, feedback, design, feedback, design, feedback, and moving through iterations helps me move from the masculine pole, which I first come in, so I'm going to solve this problem, and slowly integrate some more holistic concepts and feminine concepts, and I can eventually arrive at a more balanced perspective. So that's ultimately how we arrived at this very sensuous and curvy design, which I gotta say, this is the first time I've ever used so many curves. And it was really nice. It was a stretch for me, but it was really nice, and I think it's the right. It does what it needs to do, and my personal journey is the same approach. I think I know what I'm doing. I get feedback from life. I try again. I get some more feedback. Constant small adjustments. So some elements of the table that I think are important to note. There's 4 benches, right? So this is an inviting space. This is for everyone. An individual seat is for one person. A bench is for many. And there's only benches here, so everyone is welcome on all sides, coming from all corners. There are really no hard edges other than, this edge here on the bench, but even still where you would grab the bench to pick it up or move it, there's like these really generous curves, which again, there's no hard edge. And so for me, coming from the place of Judaism where it's very clear if you are right or wrong, if you're in or out. Not to be too casual, but Christianity, the message of Jesus, has knocked the hard edges off of the initial message from Judaism. And so, knock the hard edges off. Let's calm this down a little bit. Let's simplify it and make it more approachable, which is one of the reasons why I still am attracted to Christianity. It just simplifies things a lot. So we have these curves here. We also have a brass inlay on top of the table, and it forms a rectilinear triangle from 3 points. And so this is an attempt to speak to the mystery of the Trinity, and it's on the horizontal plane, which is reflecting upwards. And so it's an attempt to reflect back to the heavens the way that we can understand God, or the mystery of God, as best we can. ED. And so there's this kind of, it's not a circular thing, but this is a more circular shape. It's an oval shape. And so these angles intersecting at 90 degrees and 45 degrees, for me, was a moment to circle the square, which is a Renaissance, potentially, very likely a pre-Renaissance notion of man trying to come into a relationship with God. It's very simple. There's 3 elements. There's no trim. There's no confusing what this is. And I would love to sit here. This seems like a place that I would want to come.
Talk a little bit about the wood selection and then also the heavy legs.
Yes. So the wood is American white oak, solid. There's a little bit of plywood in the legs, but the benches and the tabletop are all very substantial solid wood. And it has an oil finish on it. So I wanted to keep this as natural as possible and as few elements as possible. So there's 2 legs, there's 1 top, there's an oil finish. This is meant to be lived with, and over time this will get worn in and beaten, and that's great. That's what happens in life. There was a moment when this was waiting in this back hallway to be installed, and during the freeze week, a pipe busted, and some water dripped on one of the benches. And there was a discussion about, do we refinish or what? And I came in and I looked at it and I said, it's okay. It's not messed up, and it's the first touch beyond me. This is nature interacting with this thing, and it's out of my hands as a child. Now it belongs to everyone. It belongs to the world. So I think that's the spirit, that the choice to use such dense, hard wood that comes from this place, it's like a timestamp, and then it's off and running. The legs are a really thick buildup of solid and plywood, and if you can come up, you can see it's a long, extruded, rounded shape, and we wanted to have a really solid base, and initially it was going to be 4 legs, and it was like, no, we need to make it 2 legs. We need to simplify it as much as possible, but this idea of 2 is coming up over and over: male, female, dark, light, good and evil, all these things. This is a drama. This is like a diorama of our life, and so there's an opportunity to be symbolic at every move.
And I will tell you, when we started the process of this, one of the intriguing things that happened was about that time we were hosting Nevertheless She Preached conference, and one of the speakers actually tweeted out a picture of our table and said, she's a pretty well-known speaker and preacher, and said, of all the churches I've ever worked in, First Austin is the only one that actually has a functioning table. I think that talks about their theology. It's not a symbolic table, it's an actual table you could have in a kitchen where everyone can eat and share a meal. And she said, I wonder how that affects and impacts the church's theology. I mean, I'd never realized before that is true. Most Baptist churches are sure, they have the This Do in Remembrance of Me table. Nothing like a table you could actually have in your kitchen, and I have thought a lot about that. I do think that impacts us and how we do church, having something like this as the central element of our worship space. So I think we did this first. I don't even think we had drawings of the pulpit until this was done.
Yeah, we wanted this to dictate kind of what they would eventually speak to each other, but this would really drive the project.
Mm-hmm. And then we moved to the pulpit. So you want to talk a little bit about the pulpit?
Yeah, so the pulpit, it's where the word is preached. And I guess it could be argued, I don't know who's arguing, but the word, in this institution, the word was given by God. And there are many speakers who speak the word, but the word is fixed. I don't know if fixed is the right word. Revealed maybe is a better word. And the speaker interprets the word, and the listeners make their own interpretation as they receive the word. So there's a lot of subjectivity and softness there. Maybe there's some hardness, but not here. So the idea with the pulpit was to, again, make these rounded transitions between the planes. And I think I initially talked about the light and how the light moves around a curve. And there's an attractive quality to a bending gradation of a shadow, the way that the light moves around a curve. It's like it's inviting me to come and see what's on the other side. And I really do think that the Word of God is like that. Hearing the Word again and again, hearing it in different times in my life, receiving it in different ways. So now I've got to rethink my whole artistic language, because the curves really make more sense than the hard edges do. So I'm grateful. I wouldn't have gotten there if not for this project. So again, it's a very simple object, and there's these two parallel kind of movements of energy they have these cathedrals in them, and so they're moving one way, but they're also moving the other. And so it speaks to this kind of cyclical nature that energy moves through our bodies and the universe and through a church. There's many people will speak at this, and everybody brings their own revelation to the revelation. It's kind of layers upon layers. And it's a little difficult to see from this vantage point, but there's a very small brass pencil ledge on top of the pulpit top that speaks back to that the same brass inlay.
And I know one of the questions we're going to have today, and I'm hoping you all will help everybody understand this, is going to be, where is the Bible stand now? So about halfway through the project, we realized we weren't even talking about the Bible stand, but Nick had seen it here and knows how central that is to things. So Nick is actually now going to take elements of the old communion table, in particular the limestone, and make us a new Bible stand so that what we once had still serves as the foundation for Scripture here in the church. But we couldn't do that because we would have been without a communion table. Well, it could have worked during COVID, but we didn't know COVID was going to happen. And we didn't want you to come back in without a communion table to the congregation. So
Stay tuned.
There will be one more element that we're still going to add to this. So I'm going to talk about this in church. You're going to hear it twice today. But I want you to talk a little bit about what you said to me, was it Wednesday, when we installed things, and you talked about now they really begin.
Yeah, so I just had a child 2 years ago, not just, but I see that this child doesn't belong to me. I'm the primary steward. My wife and I are the primary stewards of this child, but this child belongs to life. The child belongs to everyone. And now that these things are made and installed, they never really belonged to me. I guess I was the primary. We were all the primary stewards in this instance. But these things belong to the church. They belong to all of you. They belong to people that haven't even come here yet. And now the real life begins. Or this life begins. Who knows? It was a tree before from who knows where, and now it's a table and benches, and then who knows what happens in the future. That's not my business. But I guess I understand a little more now about what a legacy can be, and not in like an egotistical sense, but in like an energetic continuum, and like what I am connected to. And it's not about me, it's not about the work, it's just I have been brought into the continuum of this church and beyond this. And this is the result. It's funny, like as a maker of things, it's my job to make things and push them out into the world, but I don't hang on to them. I want to make new things. So this is like a footstep of the conversation and the exchange that we had, and now it gets to have its own life. And it has these threaded inserts on the bottom, so you can put wheels on it. So whereas the other table could never move, one person can move this, so thanks, God. I just put wheels on everything, it makes sense.
Well, thank you, Nick.
Thank you so much.
It's been a great process, and I'm excited for everyone to see it today. We'll take communion for the first time from the table during Agape meal today, so I'm excited about it. I want to give you all a chance to come up, feel the table, see the surface closer, and meet Nick. We also have brochures here of some of Nick's other work, and introduce yourself. But thank you all for coming here this morning.